judges, president of the various courts, members of the legal profession and academia represented here today. Thank you. Members of staff of the Supreme Court of Appeal, members of the Communication Department of the Office of the Chief Justice, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. As most of you will know, the legal profession is steeped in tradition. The holding of a special court sitting to honor and pay tribute to deceased judges is an age-old tradition that has been observed in many countries for many years. It is a well-established tradition that we are proud to preserve. Ceremonies of that nature are traditionally held at the court where the deceased judge last served. In keeping with that tradition, we are gathered here today in a special sitting of this court to honor and salute two deceased colleagues who served this court with distinction. As the saying goes, charity begins at home, so it is appropriate to extend a special word of welcome to my esteemed colleagues, the permanent and acting justices of this court. I must say that it is a rare honor and privilege as justices of this court to be sitting on the bench with esteemed retired colleagues, among them a nonagerian and a few octogenarians. They have put in a lot of effort to be here today, and this attests to an unwavering commitment to the judiciary par excellence. Their presence infuses us with renewed energy and vigor to serve the judiciary with zeal. We also have among us leaders of various courts. Among them is Judges President Mlambo, Tlaleti Musi, Judge President Hendricks, who is currently an acting justice of this court, Judges President Poyo Dwati and Karelse, as well as acting Judge President Ntlangulela and acting Deputy Judge President, the last one is acting Judge President Ntlangulela. As we all know, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, one of the key spokes in the wheel of life is family. Bearing in mind how demanding and isolating the judicial office is, our family life forms the foundation of our support system. It is therefore with joy that I acknowledge the presence of the late Justice Mtiani's daughters, Bajabulile Mtiani, Zamantungwa Mgosi, Zanele Mtiani, and Ayanda Mtiani. Also present among us today is the late Justice Hoekster's wife, Mrs. Frances Hoekster. Other members of the Hoekster family present here today are Justice Hoekster's daughters, Professor Cora Hoekster and her husband, Mr. James van Heerden, Mrs. Winifred Harms, and Justice Hoekster's grandchildren, Theodore Harms and Francis Harms. These are the people who provided much needed love and support to our two colleagues and kept the home fires burning, thus enabling them to focus on their work and to serve our country. It was heartwarming earlier on to see our older colleagues' faces beaming with joy when putting faces to the names of family members who were obviously often mentioned with affection and admiration by our two deceased colleagues in yesteryears. We are truly honored to have members of both families among us today. We also have among us various representatives of the legal profession and the academia who will also pay tribute to the deceased colleagues. A warm word of welcome to you for honoring our invitation. Your presence here as members of the profession is highly appreciated. I must also acknowledge the presence of a number of members of the profession that I saw here today. Amongst them is Justice Hefer's son, Advocate C.F. Hefer, and Mr. Dans Foos, a well-known attorney in Bloemfontein. I think I saw another attorney over there. Welcome to you as well. A warm welcome is extended to every single person present here today. Your presence means a lot to us. We are deeply grateful. Our program is as follows. There will be tributes made on behalf of the legal profession by the Free State Legal Practice Council, which will be represented by Mr. Divet, by the Free State Society of Advocates, which will be represented by Advocate Neil Snellenberg, the Pan-African Bar Association of South Africa, PABASA, represented by Advocate Khouwe, the Black Lawyers Association, represented by its president, Mr. N.F. Mvundlela, National Association of Democratic Lawyers, represented by Mr. Krish Govender, Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, represented by Advocate M. Lynch, the University of the Free State, represented by Professor D. Brandt, who is the Director of the Free State Center for Human Rights. Without much ado, ladies and gentlemen, I will call the first speaker, Mr. M. Divet, to say a few words. Mr. Divet.
Thank you, Honorable President Moseneke, Justices and retired Justices of the Constitutional Court and this esteemed Court, Judges present, members of the Judiciary, the Mtiani and Hoekster families, distinguished members of the legal profession and guests, may I say all protocol observed. It is an honor to stand before you today as we pay tribute to two towering figures in our legal fraternity, the late Justice Kayelihle Kenneth Mtiani and the late Justice Gustav Gerardus Hoekster. Their contributions to the legal landscape of South Africa are profound, and their legacies will continue to impact jurisprudence in our law. Justice Mtiani, born on 13 September 1944 in Dwendwe, KwaZulu-Natal, embarked on a remarkable journey in the legal field. He pursued higher education with determination, earning a B.Juris degree from UNISA in 1972, followed by an LLB in 1984 and an LLM in 1994 from the University of Natal, Durban. These academic achievements laid the groundwork for a career marked by a deep commitment to justice and equality. Justice Mtiani was admitted as an attorney in 1975 and founded KK Mtiani and Company, a law firm in Durban, known for its focus on public interest, particularly those involving disadvantaged communities. His leadership in commissions of inquiry, especially those investigating racism and corruption, demonstrated his strong sense of social responsibility. In 1997, Justice Mtiani was appointed as a judge of the Natal Supreme Court, marking the beginning of a distinguished judicial career. His fairness and integrity led to appointments as an acting judge in the Supreme Court of Appeal in 2000 and a permanent judge in 2001. In 2012, he was appointed as the Deputy President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, a position which he held with distinction until his retirement in 2014. His leadership was characterized by wisdom and an unwavering commitment to the rule of law. Justice Hoekster, born in 1924, was another pillar of our judiciary. After matriculating at Hoërskool Windhoek, he served in the 6th South African Division in Italy during World War II. This experience undoubtedly shaped his strong sense of duty and justice. He pursued his legal studies with distinction, earning a BA and later both a BA and LLB from Emmanuel College, Cambridge. Justice Hoekstra began his legal career as a judge's registrar before joining the Pretoria Bar in 1949. He established himself as a leading legal mind, taking silk in 1965. His judicial career saw him serve on various benches, including the Natal bench and later the Appellate Division, as it was then known, following in his father's footsteps, who was also a justice in this court. Justice Hoekstra was also a man of diverse interests, known for his intellectual rigor and versatility. As we reflect on the lives of these two remarkable men, we are reminded of the enduring principles they stood for: justice, equality, and the relentless pursuit of truth. Their legacies will continue to guide us as we strive to build a more just and equitable South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Divert. The next speaker will be Advocate Snellenberg. I omitted to mention that once the members of the legal profession are done with their tributes, we'll have a tribute on behalf of the judiciary. Tribute to Justice K.K. Mtiani by Justice L. Mpati, who's the former president of the Supreme Court of Appeal. A tribute to Justice G.G. Hoekstra by Justice J.J.F. Hefer, who served as an acting Chief Justice of the Appellate Division and the acting President of the Supreme Court of Appeal. Thereafter, a message from the Chief Justice will be read by my colleague, Justice Nathan Ponen, and a vote of thanks will be delivered by the Deputy President of this court, Justice Zondi, who will also, once he concludes with a vote of thanks, adjourn the proceedings. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Snellenberg.
My pleasure, President Moseneke, Justices. One cannot do justice to either relate Justice Mtiani or Justice Hoekstra in the time that we are allowed. But we pay tribute to very exceptional and special persons, both from a professional point of view as well as from a personal point of view. Both these late justices are examples of persons, jurists and justices who stood up for what they believed in and who rather took the road lesser travelled. They travelled different paths, but there are remarkable similarities when one looks at their lives. Of course, we are proud that both of them were in the bar and took silk in the bar before they joined and were called to the bench. Suffice it to say that both these justices left an indelible mark, not only in the history of our beloved country and its jurisprudence, but as examples of persons who were known for caring for others, making time for others, and no matter the pressure they were under, they were always willing to assist. Both these justices are known to have made time for their families, which, as the President mentioned, is no small feat in this profession. From humble beginnings, Justice Mtiani rose through the ranks to the fourth highest office in the judiciary. His life and practice, and later as a judge, was devoted to the most noble and honourable of causes: the fight against apartheid through judicial means and achieving access to justice for everyone, including the poorest of the poor. Justice Mtiani is known as attorney for handling mainly public interest and political cases, although he had a very diverse practice. But the one feature in all the matters that he took on was that he mostly litigated on behalf of litigants who could not afford it. His measure as a justice, a jurist, and a person is to some extent captured by how his peers described him after his passing. An exceptional human being, a giant, a most treasured colleague, a good, warm, and kind man, a calming presence and a unifying force in court, patient, always willing to help, a supportive colleague who treated every colleague with respect and dignity, and probably even most important, someone who, despite his busy schedule, always made time for his family. Justice Hoekstra was a man of many qualities and talents, ranging from interrupting his studies in 1942 to serve in the 6th South African Division in Italy during the Second World War, to trout fishing, being an avid and well-read reader, a hobby that most lawyers forsake due to the vast volume of papers they have to read, to playing the piano and violin, and, said his peers when he left the bar, some tennis in a very subtle way, and I understand a practical joke or two. During his practice as Silk at the Pretoria Bar, Justice Hoekstra was known for his generosity showed to his juniors. Although now mostly known for his work as chairman of the Hoekstra Commission, Justice Hoekstra is in fact lauded by his peers as an exceptional jurist that made outstanding contributions as barrister and later as judge.
President Moseneke, Deputy President, Justices of this court, retired justices, their families, and esteemed guests. I am grateful and honored to be a mouthpiece of PABASA today at this honorable proceeding. I must say that when I was called up, I was a bit challenged because both justices appeared here. I have never appeared before any of them. I mean, Justice Hoekstra was in this premises before I was even an idea in my parents. However, I did get help from the family, which I'm grateful for. They shared their life with their dad, the Mtiani family. With Justice Hoekstra, I got my friend Google to assist me. Hopefully, AI didn't intervene and do what she's known doing. There are many notable judgments by Justice Mtiani that we have seen, but for me there was one that was outstanding. It wasn't in the list. It was the Citizen versus McBride, and it was overturned. But the reason why this one was particularly of note to me was it showed me the man he was. Facts is facts. He was unwavering. When he believed in something, he went for it until the end. It showed me insight into the man he was. And by the time I came to see the videos that were sent by his daughters, I saw not just a judge, but a father as well. Some of us never got a chance to have a father figure in our lives. And it drew me in, and I saw a father and a family that stuck together in this job that requires so much, and they shared so much of their father with us, and we are grateful. But as I was going through the videos, I saw something, even though this was hearsay, I beg leave to, I'm not going to hand it up, but I understand he had a very good golf swing on the green, and he even demonstrated it, and I was like, I wish he had left me that. As far as the law is concerned, I think I'll manage. But it was an honor and a privilege, and I'm grateful to have seen that. We do know that we get to know judges through their judgments, and that's what I got from him. With Justice Hoekstra, my friend Google came up and he said, listen, there was this fraud parity case, but my Afrikaans tutor warned me against saying insurance in Afrikaans because I might offend. So I'll say the insurance in English. And in that judgment, the intellectual principle of novice, Nova, whatever, you remember it, I'll remember it, I'm nervous, so. But anyway, it was a great addition to the jurisprudence of the country, and I think for him, I understand that he had a mean sense of humor, and that's something that I wish he had also left a bit for me, because in this profession it can get a bit stiff and nobody wants to laugh. But I am grateful to have gotten the help of my friend Google. We are grateful as PABASA for the work that the two justices has left for us. We will try our level best to walk in their shoes. We are grateful for their unwavering commitment to justice, unshakable integrity, and unrelenting pursuit of excellence. Both their contributions to the legal system is amazing. As we celebrate both their lives, we honor their contributions to our legal system. And may their souls continue to inspire us as we strive for excellence, uphold the law with integrity, and pursue justice with unwavering dedication. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kowe. We'll have an address by the president of the Black Lawyers Association, Mr. Mvundlela.
Thank you, President Moseneke, and good morning. Deputy President of the SCA, all the justices of the SCA, JP of Free State present, and all the JPs, all the other judicial officers, retired justices of this court, members of the profession, PABASA and NADEL present, and the other advocates. The families of both the late Justices Hoekstra and Mtiani, ladies and gentlemen, receive our greetings from the National Executive of the Black Lawyers Association at this moment of reflection and remembrance of the two justices of the second highest court in the land, the then highest court in the land at the time of Justice Hoekstra. We gather here today to do two things. One is to mourn the passing of the two giants of the legal profession who earned their stripes and ran their separate races with distinction. The second being to celebrate their lives which they shared with us as the profession, the judiciary, and their families, to whom we owe a great gratitude because they were able to share them with us. We mourn their passing because humanly we would have wished they lived and continued to guide us endlessly, but death, being the necessary end to life, robbed us and took them before we could even imagine. It could not allow us the luxury of continuing to benefit from their gift of knowledge and intelligence. And in eternity we trust that they will live on our hearts and minds. Their fond memories shall remain with us every time we refer to their studious work. It is often said that people shall always remember the few mistakes or moments of weakness which we all are susceptible to have in our lifetime, whilst the good, massive good at it that we did is often interred with our bones when we pass and get buried. I submit the President and your colleagues of the SCA and everyone that we must celebrate the two justices because unlike some of us Their footsteps and footprints are marked with an enormous undeletable ink in the history of mankind. They spent their adult lives until retirement making history, designing the reasoning the future must uphold and follow. They left for us a jurisprudence based on human rights, equality before the law, justice for all, and the rule of law in the country. Justice Hoekstra was in the SCA before democracy, and he saw us through the period until 1994. His judgment, whilst dealing with rights within the law as it existed then, taught us that what is not explicitly excluded must not be implied as included in any order. And this judgment, when I read it, it reminded me of the manner in which the typing and everything was done in this court and in all the other courts, and I realized indeed it is old. Justice Mtiani, post-constitutional order, penned two judgments, one in which the British tobacco and the other, the judgment of Qing that he penned at the Concord, reflecting the rights in our constitution as being non-negotiable. With a stroke of a pen, they spoke their minds. They chose the space of the brave. They did not scream for attention. They led with solid ideas through their judgments. They dictated what the law must be and how it should be interpreted and understood. And for that, we honor their memory, and we must honor it intensively by not relenting in the defense for the rule of law. The Black Lawyers Association wishes their families, friends, and colleagues the strength and courage to celebrate their lives. May their beautiful souls rest in eternal peace, assured that South Africa shall always be a country led within the context of the rule of law. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Mvundlela. Mr. Krish Naidu, representing the National Association of Democratic Lawyers. Thank you.
Thank you, President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, the Deputy President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, judges of the Supreme Court of Appeal, retired judges, judges of the division in the Free State, judges president of the various divisions, the families, the Hoekstra families, and the families, representatives of the Mtiani family, members of the legal profession, and honored guests. It's not easy now for me to speak without reflecting on all the wonderful statements, comments, and observations that have been made by all the previous speakers. And I've had to shift a little bit so that I don't end up repeating what has already been said. So in the circumstances, I would want to talk a little bit about the roles that these two great eminent jurists have played in our lives, but in the context of the history of our country that they had to navigate through. And I'll have to obviously be as brief as possible. When one reflects on the fact that Judge Hoekstra had lived to 100 years, and I had to recheck my notes, and having been born in 1924 and having passed away a few months ago, it is quite remarkable when one looks at the history of the 20th century, looking at the history of the world with the World War, and having heard that Judge Hoekstra even had to fight along the side of the Allied forces in Italy and survive that, and come back to serve the country, and serve a country that was going through all the serious consequences of colonialism, imperialism, war, devastation, and apartheid as well. And how Judge Hoekstra managed to navigate through that century of his life speaks volumes, and still having had the opportunity to serve our new democracy until shortly after 1994. And we must note that he had retired at the age of 70. And the same applied to Judge Mtiani. He also retired at the age of 70. In other words, they gave their full life to the judiciary as the law allowed them that space. And it's something that says a lot about maintaining a good health regime and surviving the rigors of the judiciary. And as we know, we have seen many of our judges having to overcome the real problems of life, the ordinary issues of family, being away from family, the issues of health and the stresses and the strains. And it's reflected on the way they've even had to handle themselves on the bench. And sometimes they attract unfair criticisms because we do not understand so much about what goes on in the lives of judges. I want to say that Judge Mtiani, as he was known to us and to me personally as KK or Kenneth, I want to highlight just some of the things that we should also not forget, even though this is an important occasion to reflect on judicial work, the great integrity that he upheld, and his excellence with all the work that he did. It just didn't come as easy as the words that we pronounce. When we reflect on the fact that as compared to the life of Judge Hoekstra, and with great respect to that life that Judge Hoekstra was able to lead, Judge Mtiani, Kenneth, as he came through the ranks, had to come through a life of deprivation, disadvantage, discrimination, and struggle to be able to get through and have an education, to qualify, to get articles in the first place, and then to qualify as an attorney, as a young black practitioner in a country that was going through the worst ravages. It is something that needs to be recognized, it needs to be mentioned, and we need to remind ourselves that when we talk about the accomplishments of a judge, it had come after a very, very long struggle along a long road of overcoming adversities and challenges, discrimination, and obstacles. Even as a legal practitioner, Judge Mtiani, as an attorney, would have had to deal with the rigors of having to deal with the pressure that comes from a law society that was not friendly for many obvious reasons, then going to the bar and to face further challenges. As we all know, we may be able to just gloss over these things, but they were real, and black lawyers, in particular black African lawyers, had to go through much more challenges than we could ever imagine. But KK was a very gentle person and a very good friend to us. He, after qualifying or being admitted as an advocate, he served the people, as has been mentioned, handling many cases. He had been called to assist in the Eastern Cape with the crises that was ongoing during the states of emergency. The numerous young people, people who were fighting for freedom, and the activists who were detained and harassed and put on trial. He was there amongst a cohort of struggle lawyers, and he was proudly one of our NADEL members. After 1990, he was back in Durban, and we were able to see him much more. And he was able to take over the chair of our branch, following under the mentorship of people like Chief Justice, the late Pius Langa, and even who was the president of NADEL, and our vice president, Minister Dalla Omar. So KK followed in the footsteps of these great leaders of NADEL, and he was able to carry our branch right until he was called to the bench. And he left his legacy there in NADEL as well, and for that we always remember him. KK was also a great sports person, and I must mention that he was a terrific tennis player. He was athletic, he was fit and strong on the tennis court. And during the years just before he left to the Supreme Court of Appeal, he was a regular player in all the tennis courts around KZN and Durban, and an accomplished player. I had the good fortune of playing with him in a doubles tournament at a club level. Of course, we didn't make it to the finals, but I think I let him down because I wasn't up to his standard, and he was amongst the best. So with those words, I can just record that KK was an activist. He was a defender of, as has been mentioned, of all the disadvantaged persons. As an attorney, he was accomplished, he was kind, he was respectful. He respected the courts, he respected the officers of the court. He came from that generation that understood how important respect and collegiality counted. It is something that judges today can see in our courts, the lack of respect, the complete disjuncture that something has happened in this country where the inability of our lawyers, we don't find these days role models amongst legal practitioners. It's so hard to find them. And they come and you meet with them, and you can only say that they are being influenced by the wrong attitudes, by showing disrespect to judges, even if they had different views. They are undermining the rule of law, they are undermining all that we fought for, all the great things that KK, Judge Mtiane, and Judge Hoekstra stood for, and I think all of us that are here today gathered, we should all be concerned. That is the duty of many of us in the few years that we have in our lives, is to really do so much of work, as we have been set back by many things that have not gone right, but we are filled with hope. And it's occasions like this that help us to re-energize us and to tell us that there is a path ahead that we have to follow, or else we would all be the losers for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Krish Govender. Mr. Lindsay, representing the NPA.
Thank you, Judge, President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, Honorable Justice Molemela, Honorable Justices present, and all the Judge President present, all members of the legal fraternity, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I have the honor of representing the Director of Public Prosecutions for the Free State Province here today. But I stand before you not only representing the prosecutors in the Free State Division, but all prosecutors in the country. It was with great sadness that we received the news of the passing away of both Justice Mtiani and Justice Hoekstra. We have gathered today in this august palace of justice, where wisdom and fairness intertwine to remember two beacons of legal excellence. They both have left indelible imprint on the very fabric of our legal system through their various seminal judgments. We have heard how they have served in various capacities within the justice sector and the legal fraternity. As members of the prosecution service, we held them in high regard. Today, we not only pay tribute to these legal luminaries' legal acumen and brilliance, but also to their humanity. Indeed, they have deeply touched the lives of those whom they worked closely with and the litigants who found solace in their judgments. Reading from different articles about Justice Hoekstra, his eloquence, the ability to lighten heavy conversations with practical jokes, and his generosity to his junior colleagues are legendary. To borrow from MTK Moerani SC's article paying tribute to Justice Mtiani, those who worked closely with Justice Mtiani described him at his funeral in the following glowing terms, open quote, "A treasured, generous, and deeply principled man, an exceptional human being, a good, warm, and kind man, someone who made it his task to see to the welfare of his junior colleagues, making sure that they were not overwhelmed by the heavy workload to breaking point, always willing to lend a patient ear and a helping hand, whose love for others knew no bounds, a lovely human being, a person of great integrity, an excellent judge, a wonderful human being, friend and colleague, a beautiful soul, a fount of wisdom, the epitome of scholar and a gentleman," close quote. To their friends, family, and legal fraternity, we extend our deepest sympathies. May their memory inspire us to seek justice with compassion, to uphold the law with integrity, and to remember that behind every case lies a human story. I wish to also extend my deepest and heartfelt appreciation to the President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, the Honorable Justice Molemela, for giving us this opportunity on behalf of the prosecution service to be able to pay tribute to these giant justices. I thank you.
Thank you very
Judge President Molemela, Deputy Judge President Zondi, Justices and retired Justices of the Supreme Court of Appeal and the Constitutional Court, judges present of the High Courts present, other judges, colleagues from the legal profession, and most importantly, of course, friends and family of Justice Mtiane and Justice Hoekstra, who have graced us today with their presence. I convey the highest regards of my Dean, Professor Serge Kamga, the Dean of the Faculty of Law of the University of the Free State. He could not be here today as he is abroad, and he asked me to represent him and our faculty, and I suppose legal academia, and I am greatly honored to do so. Unlike many others here, I never came across Justices Mtiane or Hoekstra in life. I never had the privilege to appear before either of them in court, and I also did not have occasion to meet them as an academic. But I have come to know them in another way, through what lawyers of my age still fondly remember as those blue books, the law reports. Both Justices Mtiane and Hoekstra wrote many judgments that are rightly heralded as important and noteworthy. For Justice Mtiane, myself being a constitutional and administrative law person, I record his judgment in Tulip Diamonds and Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development concerning standing to bring a review application, and the judgment in British American Tobacco South Africa and the Minister of Health, specifically for the explanation he provided there for how issues of fact and policy may be intertwined in determining the cogency of the justification offered for the limitation of the right to freedom of expression that was at issue in that case. I will remember Justice Hoekstra in turn also for those judgments that are listed on the program, such as Zenzile, another administrative law judgment, but most for his judgment in BTR Industries South Africa and Metal and Allied Workers Union. For 25 years I taught administrative law to undergraduate law students, coincidentally of course from another blue book, the book penned by Professor Cora Hoekstra, Judge Hoekstra's daughter, who is here with us today. And I recall how year after year I would see 300 or 400 young LLB students mystified by the slight distinction between the real likelihood of bias test and the reasonable apprehension of bias test for apparent bias. And then when I took them through Justice Hoekstra's lucid, simple, and down-to-earth explanation of the distinction and motivation for the preference for the latter test, I would always see all their eyes light up and understanding descend. To conclude, of course, Justices Mtiane and Hoekstra are sorely missed at a personal level by friends, family, and colleagues, and by South Africa, where their passing leaves a gap in our public life. But I can, on behalf of all my colleagues at our faculty, and if I may be so bold, the whole of legal academia, say to those who knew the two justices that even those like me who did not will always remember them, and that their legacies will always live on through those blue books. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Brand. We now move on to the tributes on behalf of the judiciary. The first tribute is paid to Justice K.K. Mtiani by the former President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, Justice L. Mpati.
Kaelihle Kenneth Mtiane, who passed on unexpectedly on 28 February 2021 at the age of 76, was born on 13 September 1944 at Ndwendwe in rural KwaZulu-Natal. His young life and that of his parents, including his education at both primary and secondary level, are comprehensively and neatly captured in a tribute by Advocate M.T.K. Moerane SC in the April 2021 issue of The Advocate, a publication of the General Council of the Bar of South Africa. In 1972, KK, as Justice Mtiane was affectionately known, to his colleagues, obtained a B. Juris degree from the University of South Africa, and obtained an LLB degree from the University of South Africa in 1994. I think there's a mistake. In 1994, he was awarded an LLM degree by the University of Natal, Durban. Purely for ease of reference, I shall henceforth refer to my esteemed colleague and friend interchangeably as Justice Mtiane, KK, or Ken. In 1975, he was admitted as an attorney and practiced as such for 9 years before joining the bar in Durban. During the period of his practice as an attorney, he had several article clerks that he mentored. One of those is now a former Chief Justice of the Republic. Justice Mtiane joined the Durban bar after he had been admitted as an advocate in 1984. It is during this period, following his admission as an advocate, that I got to know him or know about him. I had been admitted as an attorney of the Eastern Cape High Court in Grahamstown on 21 February 1985, at the height of the political unrest that had engulfed the Eastern Cape at the time. Most of the attorneys who were practicing in the Eastern Cape were overwhelmed by the number of cases they had to deal with and consequently had to brief counsel. Having heard from other attorneys about him, I never had the privilege of briefing him because he was always busy and therefore unavailable. In the meantime, and in February 1989, my name was removed from this role of attorneys of the Eastern Cape, and on the same day, I was admitted as and enrolled as an advocate of the Republic of South Africa. Justice Mtiane took silk, senior counsel status, in 1995, and directly afterwards he was appointed an acting judge of the Judicial High Court. He later was appointed judge of the KwaZulu-Natal Division of the High Court. In 2001, Justice Mtiane was appointed a judge of the Supreme Court of Appeal of South Africa. I cannot recall when and where the two of us met face to face, but when he was appointed permanently as judge of the Supreme Court of Appeal, we ultimately met, working together, and really got to know each other. When he arrived at the SCA in the year 2000, having been appointed to act in this court after another colleague, Justice Madlanga, had been released from his acting appointment, Justice Mtiane and I thus worked together in the Supreme Court of Appeal from 2000 until his retirement in 2014. During this period, i.e. 2000 to 2014, we sat together in cases on a number of occasions. This led to a strong bond and a personal relationship that developed between us, and he became a trusted friend. In 2003, he strongly supported a move for me to be appointed as Deputy President of this court. As a member of the court, Justice Mtiane loved and enjoyed his work immensely. In his eulogy, Advocate Moerane SC said the following about him, quote, Justice Mtiane immersed himself in his work on the SCA bench, writing several significant judgments. In this regard, reference is made to the judgment in The Citizen, 1978 PTY Ltd and others versus McBride, 2010 4SA 48 SCA, where he wrote a dissenting judgment. The case was about the interpretation of a provision of the Constitution in the context of the law of defamation. The question was whether or not a person who had been convicted and sentenced for murder and thereafter applied for and was granted amnesty in terms of the TRC Act can still be referred to as a murderer, or whether a statement to that effect was rendered false and thus fatal to the defense of fair comment. Although the writer of the tribute mentions that Justice Mtiane's minority judgment was upheld by a significant majority in the Constitutional Court, he nevertheless says that, quote, I confess that I did not particularly like KK's judgment or dissent. Personally, I would rather reserve my judgment. I agree, though, with the sentiment that the dissent demonstrates Justice Mtiane's courage, independence, and integrity. To these qualities, I would add determination. In another appeal, namely Ndlovu versus Nobo and Bosch versus Jika, the two appeals were heard together and judgment delivered on 30 August 2002. The matter concerned the interpretation of Section 26(3) of the PI Act. The question for consideration by the court was whether unlawful occupiers are only those who unlawfully took possession of land, commonly referred to as squatters, or it includes persons who once had lawful possession or permission, but whose possession subsequently became unlawful. In the other appeal, the tenant's lease was terminated lawfully, but he refused to vacate. At the conference held after the hearing, Justice Mtiane and I, who were the most junior members of the court, while the three senior members held another view. After some tense discussion, the two junior members kept to their view. We held the view that the appeal should succeed in the Bosch appeal, and in the other appeal, the order should be a dismissal of the appeal. The three senior colleagues held a different view. The next morning, while the two of us were discussing the appeal in my chambers, Ken kept on saying to me, "Don't worry, we're going to write this judgment." As we were discussing, one of the senior members joined us and told us that he had changed his mind and was now on our side. The judgment came out as soon as possible thereafter. In yet another appeal, in which Kay also was the most junior member of the court, he walked into my chambers mumbling the words, "Hot. What do I care about the position of the verb word in a sentence?" He relayed to me that the three Afrikaans-speaking colleagues who sat with him were arguing about the position of the verb word And when he was asked about about his view regarding the position of the Verwoerd, he said, "I'm a poor Zulu. If the three of you cannot agree, then how can I, a poor Zulu, convince any one of you how to settle the issue?" On his arrival in Bloemfontein, I discovered that Ken was a keen tennis and golf player. I informed him that some members of the court played tennis on Wednesdays. In a matter of a few days, Ken invited me to go and partner him in a tennis game against our colleagues, Justice Smallberger and the late Werner Vivier. We continued and played tennis at the house of the late Werner Vivier until he passed on in or about 2006. In 2012, Kenneth was elevated to the position of Deputy President of this court. As mentioned above, he retired from that position in 2014. During his stint as my deputy, he was always ready and willing to give me advice and support in various ways. One of the advices that he gave me was, never respond to a letter that has made you angry whilst you are angry. But when his predecessor, Deputy President Harms, was appointed to that position, he, Justice Harms, offered to ease the burden on me of drafting the role. Naturally, Ken took over that duty when he became Deputy President. At almost every end of term, he would drop off the role for approval and say, "Lex, here's your thing. I've tried hard to finish it off, but there are 2 or 3 appeals in which I tried my best, but still failed to get all the combinations right." I found always that he only needed to move 1 or 2 colleagues up or down to get it right. In 2011, Kay acted in the Constitutional Court. Earlier in 2002, he was appointed as chairman of the Electoral Court. He also chaired 2 commissions of inquiry. Let me end by endorsing the sentiment expressed to the effect that Ken was a family man who was devoted to his wife and daughters. He was over the moon when his grandson Letu was born. He treated us with cake on that day, where he proudly announced that both mother and child were well. It was a privilege for me to have known and worked with Kenneth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Justice Simpati. We'll now have a tribute to Justice Gigi Hoekstra by Justice J.J.F. Hefer. Thank you.
Madam President, I'm honored to be part of this expression of respect and remembrance of 2 former colleagues who are no longer with us. Justice Mutiani came to this court at the very end of my tenure here, so I did not get to know him very well. With Judge Hoekstra, however, I served for altogether 18 years, first in Natal and later in this court. To me, he was not only a colleague, but a very close friend. As we all know, Judge Gustav, Madam Chair, you will pardon me the old appellation, because that is how he was known, as Judge Hoekstra. Judge Gustav was the son of the late Oscar Hoekstra, one of the most respected former members of this court. Much has been said about his service with the South African forces in Italy during the Second World War. What has not been said is that he was only 18 years old at that stage. Moreover, in his platoon, there was another South African youth called Michael Corbett, who some 40, 50 years later became Chief Justice of South Africa. When the war ended, Hoekstra and Corbett each went his own separate way. But not much later, they were both members of a group of prospective Cambridge and Oxford students travelling together to the UK. Already armed with a BA degree from Cape Town University, Gustav entered the Emmanuel College of Cambridge, which was his father's alma mater, where he obtained a BA and later an LLB. After returning home and serving for a while as a judge's clerk, he started to practice as a member of the Pretoria Bar, took silk in '65. Eventually, he became one of the handful of practicing silks of the time who were briefed to appear for the state in the prosecution of a criminal case. The present prosecuting authority may be interested to know that Gustav Hoekstra, and with him as junior Hein Groskopf, successfully prosecuted Parity Insurance Company. And after a mammoth trial, it ended in the managing director being sent to jail. In 1970, Hoekstra was appointed, like his father again, as a judge of the Southwest Africa High Court. That is where I encountered him in 1971 in an opposed motion which lasted almost a week. Little did I know that our paths would cross again. In 1974, Judge Hoekstra was transferred to the Natal Provincial Division in Pietermaritzburg and the Durban and Coast Division, of course, in Durban. And a few months later, I was appointed to the same divisions. And we served together there until 1982, when he was elevated to this court. And within a year, the same lot befell me. And here we served until 1994, when he was discharged from active service. One cannot speak about Judge Hoekstra without mentioning his appointment as the sole member of the so-called Hoekstra Commission, which was set up during 1979 to inquire into the structure and functioning of the courts. What is unique about this commission is that it lasted, and it functioned for 5 years. But in the meantime, the commission filed several interim reports relating to matters which he regarded sufficiently important to receive immediate remedial action. Like some of us may remember the old special courts for blacks that he mentioned, and of course the overcrowding of prisons. Apart from matters like these, he concerned himself particularly with the independence of the judiciary, the appointment of judges and magistrates, and the possibility of political interference with judicial functions. I cannot deal in detail with any of these findings and recommendations on these matters, but it is significant that all of them eventually found their way into first the interim and later the final constitution. It is usual on an occasion like this to mention and sometimes even discuss one or more of the deceased judge's judgments. I do not intend to do so. Suffice it to say that Judge Hoekster's judgments speak of careful consideration and well-reasoned determination of the matter at hand. Sitting in court, he would be fair to all concerned, patient, and wherever necessary, helpful to counsel, and where necessary, patient and carefully helping those sitting with him. I may say in this regard that in one of the first appeals that I sat in when I came to this court, it was in the old days when there was still a death sentence, and the appeal was against the imposition of the death sentence. It was a 5-bencher. I was number 5, and I thought I was safe. I would listen to 4 of them expressing their opinions, and I could follow them, one of them. But it so happened that Judge Hoekster was number 2. It so happened during the conference that number 1 set aside the death sentence. Then Hoekster followed that, set aside the death sentence. Then came the other 2, 3 and 4. Hanger. There I was. The junior depended on me. And it was something that Hoekster had said in his reasoning at the conference that convinced me. I asked for a lunch break first. After lunch I came back and I agreed with him. In private life there was never any sign of the stress that judicial occupation sometimes brings. On the contrary, Judge Hoekster loved practical jokes. Some of his colleagues and friends, including me, became thoroughly aware of that particularly after bar dinners or events like that. He was a more than able tennis player and a piano and violin player, but what he enjoyed most, I think, was fly fishing. So much so that he acquired a house in Dahlstrom, and he spent much of his time there during court recesses. But apart from Dahlstrom, there were also trout streams in the Drakensberg, not far from Pietermaritzburg, and you would often find him there on a public holiday. After his retirement, he remained in Bloemfontein, where we spent many pleasant hours together. Eventually, he became bedridden. On the 9th of February of this year, we wished him well on his 100th birthday, but 2 months after he passed away. I extend my sincere sympathy to all the members of his family. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Justice Hefer. You would have noted in the program that at this stage, the Chief Justice of the Republic of South South Africa Chief Justice Raymond Mnyamezeli Zondo would pay tribute to the two deceased justices. Due to unforeseen circumstances, he is unable to, he had indicated that he would join us virtually, but unfortunately he is no longer in a position to do that. However, he has graciously sent through his tribute, and it will be read by my colleague, Justice V. Ponen. Thank you.
The President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, the Deputy President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, all Justices of the Supreme Court of Appeal, retired and serving, present, members of the Imtiani and Hoekstra families present, all Judges of the High Court present, representatives of the advocates and attorneys profession present, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I feel honored and privileged to have been invited to take part in this memorial service in honor of both the late Justice K.K. Imtiani, who passed on in 2021, and the late Justice G.G. Hoekstra, who passed on this year. I take this opportunity to thank the President of the Court for inviting me to participate and to deliver this tribute. I profusely apologize to the President of the Court and to the Imtiani and Hoekstra families that, whereas I had initially planned to at least attend this ceremony virtually, my circumstances changed recently and did not make it possible for me to even attend virtually. However, I'm grateful for this opportunity to pay tribute to those two justices who were outstanding and highly respected members of our judiciary. I would have liked to write more comprehensive tributes to these outstanding late justices. Unfortunately, my circumstances do not permit. I propose to say a few words on each of the two justices and thereafter speak about both of them. I start with Justice Imtiani. I knew Justice Imtiani very well, and he and I were like brothers because the Imtianis and Zondos are one clan. Justice Imtiani's career reflects an amazing determination by an individual who came from a poor family background, but ensured that he not only took himself and his family out of poverty, but went on to ensure an illustrious legal and judicial career for himself, but also ensured that his children got the best education that he could give them so that they could lead successful professional lives on their own. All his 4 living daughters have degrees, with the first one being an accountant and another one an admitted attorney. Justice Imtiani matriculated by private study and went on to obtain his B. Juris degree at the University of Zululand, practiced as an attorney, did his LLB and LLM at the University of Natal, and practiced as an advocate for many years before he joined the bench in KwaZulu-Natal and later this court. He rose through the ranks and ultimately became the deputy president of the court and made an enormous contribution to the running of this court. Justice Imtiani sat in more than 1,000 cases in his career as a judge and wrote numerous judgments which contributed significantly to our jurisprudence. A number of his judgments that were taken on appeal to the Constitutional Court were upheld. One of these was his judgment in McBride versus the Citizen, where the issue was where a person who had been convicted of murder committed for political purposes, but who was subsequently pardoned by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, could be called or referred to as a murderer. Justice Imtiani held that such a person could be called a murderer because it was a fact that such a person had committed murder, and the fact that he had been pardoned by the TRC did not change that fact. However, his judgment was a minority. The majority took the opposite view, but ultimately the Constitutional Court upheld Justice Imtiani's judgment. Justice Imtiani also played an important role in promoting case flow management in our courts under the leadership of Chief Justice Mokweng. He also chaired a presidential commission that looked into the conditions of service of public servants. I now come to Justice Hoekstra. I unfortunately did not have the opportunity to know Justice Hoekstra personally, but by all accounts he was a fine person, a fair judge, and an outstanding member of the judiciary. Justice Hoekstra obtained his BA degree from the University of Cape Town. Later, he went on to obtain his BA and LLB from Emmanuel College, Cambridge. Thereafter, he worked as a judge's registrar, but later joined the bar. He was appointed as a judge in Southwest Africa, now Namibia, in 1970, but served on the Natal bench from 1974 to 1982. He was appointed as a judge of appeal to this court in 1982, where he served until 1994. Justice Hoekstra is said to have been the first person to follow his father in the then appellate division. One of his well-known judgments, particularly amongst administrative law and labor law practitioners, is this court's judgment that he wrote in Administrative Transvaal versus Zenzele, one of the judgments that greatly improved the protection of job applicants and entrenched the principle of legitimate expectation in our law. Another important judgment that Justice Hoekstra wrote was in S.V. Matoang, which dealt extensively with the doctrine of common purpose, where he provided great clarity on the causality issue and the joining in issue in the context of the doctrine of common purpose. Justice Hoekstra also chaired the second Hoekstra Commission, which looked at the functioning of the courts, and he, amongst others, recommended the establishment of small claims courts, which were subsequently established and continue to play an important role in ensuring access to justice in our country. I now wish to speak about both justices. Many, many years ago, the well-known Greek philosopher Socrates gave a description of the essential qualities of a judge. He said, 4 things belong to a judge: to hear courteously, to answer wisely, to consider soberly, and to decide impartially. By all accounts, this is a befitting description of the 2 colleagues who we are honoring posthumously today. Both colleagues were persons of integrity whose commitment to the law was unwavering. Throughout their distinguished career, they served with a rare combination of wisdom, fairness, and compassion, which served them well as judges. It is evident from their judgments that every decision was made with meticulous care, grounded in a good understanding of the law, and always with a keen awareness of the human lives affected by those decisions. It is most admirable that they both served the judiciary in key roles even beyond the age of 70. Justice Imtiani continued to serve in 2 subcommittees of the heads of court after his retirement. He served as the chairperson of the Judicial Oversight Committee and the Judicial Case Flow Committee. At the age of 70 years, Justice Hoekstra was appointed to the second Hoekstra Commission. That commission expressed concerns with the system of governance of the judiciary at the time and advocated for greater involvement of the judiciary in court administration, an issue that continues to remain relevant today. It is self-evident that these were leaders who went beyond the call of duty. Today, as we are gathered at this ceremonial court sitting held in their honor, in the court in which they last served, we celebrate the legacy that they have left behind, a legacy of justice, compassion, and unwavering dedication to the rule of law, a rich contribution to our country's jurisprudence, which will remain embodied in our law reports for generations to come. This will always remind us of the high standards to which we must all aspire. May they continue to rest in peace. Their impact will endure in the hearts and minds of all who have had the privilege to know them. We, the remaining members of the judiciary, will carry forward their commitment to justice, striving always to honor your memory in the work that we do. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Justice Ponen, for reading the Chief Justice's message. I now hand over to my brother, the Deputy President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, Justice Zondi.
Thank you, President Molemela. Maya Angelou once said, I quote, "Be present in all things and grateful for all things," close quotes. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests. My name is Dumisani Zondi. I've been asked to give a vote of thanks on behalf of the members of this court. It is my honor and privilege now to give a vote of thanks to all those who helped make this event happen. I wish to extend my heartfelt gratitude to President Molemela and her office staff, the ushers, the drivers, House committee members, for working so hard to make today happen. Thank you to the family members of Justice Mtiane and Justice Hoekstra for coming to grace this occasion. This occasion would have been meaningless without your presence. The former Deputy President of this court, Justice Mba, Justice Cameron, Justice Wallis and Justice Govan, who I understand were following the proceedings virtually, and Justice van der Merwe and Justice Willis. Thank you very much, colleagues, for having made time to come and grace this occasion. I would like to send special thanks to former President Mpati and Justice Hefer for their moving tribute in honor of our late colleagues. Our special thanks go to Judges President of various divisions for being part of this occasion. Thank you very much to the speakers from various institutions, the Free State Legal Practice Council, the Free State Society of Advocates, Pan-African Bar Association of South Africa, Black Lawyers Association, National Association of Democratic Lawyers, Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, and the Director of the Free State Center for Human Rights. Again, I am grateful to each and every one of you. Thank you. The court will now adjourn until 11:30. Thank you. The court adjourns.